WWII Survival Secrets. They don't teach you. 8 forgotten tricks that still work today. War has a way of stripping life down to the raw basics: food, warmth, water, and willpower. During World War II, soldiers didn't just fight battles. They battled hunger, exhaustion, disease, and the brutal indifference of nature itself. Out there, in mud-soaked trenches and frozen forests, survival wasn't optional. It was an art. Those men became masters of fieldcraft, learning lessons forged through blood grit and cold nights with nothing but instinct to keep them going. And here's the thing, those same survival tricks still work today. If you're serious about preparedness, pay attention, because these are the kind of old-school tactics that separate survivors from statistics. And hey, before we dive in, if you live for real survival knowledge, the kind they don't teach in glossy prepper books, hit subscribe and join the community that keeps the old wisdom alive. The ground is your best shelter. When you've got bombs falling overhead and rain pouring down sideways, you learn fast that the earth isn't your enemy, it's your protection. World War II soldiers became experts at using the ground as shelter. A simple foxhole lined with branches and leaves could block wind, retain warmth, and keep them dry enough to survive another night. They didn't wait for perfect gear. They worked with what was in front of them. That's the mindset every prepper should have. Nature gives you what you need, you just have to see it. Even today, a shallow dugout, natural ridge, or patch of dense brush can be the difference between exposure and endurance. Fire without a trail of smoke. A visible campfire during war was practically a death sentence. So soldiers learned to build fires that were almost invisible. They used dry wood, small sticks, and clever airflow tricks like digging a pair of connected pits, known as a Dakota-style setup, to burn hotter and cleaner. The result? Fire that kept them warm and fed, without a cloud of smoke to give away their position. The same principle works for modern survival. If you're camping in bad weather or just conserving fuel, this low-smoke method burns hotter, faster and cleaner. Less wood, less waste, less risk. That's not just fieldcraft, that's pure efficiency. Hygiene was the hidden lifeline. Here's a fact most people forget. More World War II soldiers were taken down by disease than by bullets. Trench foot, dysentery, infections, these invisible enemies were merciless. The ones who survived were the ones who never slacked on hygiene. They dried their socks by the fire, rotated their clothes, boiled every drop of water, and buried waste far from camp. It wasn't glamorous, but it was Survival 101. And that's your takeaway. Discipline beats luck. Keep your feet dry, your water clean, and your waste contained. You can have all the food in the world, but if infection hits, it's game over. Resourcefulness wasn't optional, it was law. Soldiers learned to see tools not for what they were, but for what they could be. A helmet wasn't just for protection. It became a cooking pot, a wash basin, even a shovel in a pinch. A bayonet could be a knife, a stake, or a fire starter. That's the kind of creative thinking that wins when supplies run low. In survival, versatility is power. Look at your gear and ask yourself, how many ways can I use this? If you can think of 3, you're already ahead of the game. Blending in was more than just wearing green. Soldiers used mud, leaves and soot to match their surroundings. They dulled shiny gear, muffled sounds, and moved like part of the environment. The goal wasn't just to avoid being seen, it was to belong so completely to the landscape that the enemy's eyes slid right over them. In today's world, that same principle applies. Whether you're evading attention in a crisis or just hunting dinner in the wild, blending into your environment, visually and audibly, gives you control. Be silent, be unseen, move smart. Adaptability beats gear every time. One of the toughest lessons World War II soldiers learned was that equipment fails. Food runs out. Weather turns brutal. The survivors weren't always the strongest. They were the most adaptable. They fixed broken gear with wire, used rags as bandages, and made tools from whatever the terrain offered. That's true survival spirit, you know. When your plan falls apart, your mindset becomes your greatest weapon. Flexibility isn't really a skill, it's an instinct you train through experience. If you can adapt, you can outlast. You eat what the land offers. Rations were supposed to last weeks, but sometimes they lasted just days. So soldiers learned to forage. They gathered chestnuts, greens and berries in Europe, fished in the Pacific, and traded scraps wherever they could. Knowing what plants were edible, how to catch the small game, and how to make the most of every calorie was what kept them alive. The same goes today. Learn your region's wild foods. Practice fishing, trapping and foraging now, not when you're desperate. The more you know about what grows around you, the less dependent you are on what's in your bag. Mental strength is the ultimate weapon. When food ran out and morale crashed, the only thing left was mental toughness. The soldiers who made it weren't necessarily the biggest or the best trained. They were the ones who refused to quit. They sang, they joked, they kept hope alive when everything else said it was over. That's not romantic, it's practical. In survival, mindset is fuel. Your brain decides whether you move or freeze, whether you adapt or break. Build that mental endurance every day. Stay calm under pressure. Find small wins and never stop thinking forward. World War II soldiers didn't survive because they had fancy gear. They survived because they understood the rules of nature, and they respected them. They didn't fight the elements, they learned to work with them. Their lessons are more than history. They're a blueprint for anyone who wants to stay alive when everything goes wrong. If you value this kind of real-world survival knowledge, the old-school skills that modern life's forgotten, then hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who'd appreciate the grit behind the glory. This is Prepper's Survival Blueprint, and we're keeping the lost art of survival alive, one timeless lesson at a time.